The extreme heat waves are a reminder of the dangers of climate change. Many parts of the world are suffering from extreme heat waves. We need to take action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and mitigate the effects of climate change.
On June 20th, 2023, Portland, Oregon reached a record high temperature of 112 degrees Fahrenheit. On June 23rd, 2023, Phoenix, Arizona reached a record high temperature of 118 degrees Fahrenheit. On June 27th, 2023, Paris, France reached a record high temperature of 104 degrees Fahrenheit. On April 29th, 2023, Phalodi, India reached a record high temperature of 123 degrees Fahrenheit. On May 1st, 2023, Jacobabad, Pakistan reached a record high temperature of 120 degrees Fahrenheit. On December 27, 2022, Penrith, New South Wales reached a record high temperature of 113 degrees Fahrenheit.
Climate change and environmental disasters are serious problems facing all mankind living today. These problems pose a threat to human survival and prosperity. In order to solve climate change and environmental disasters, the efforts of nations, businesses, and individuals are also important. Since 1880, the average global temperature has risen by more than 1 degree Celsius. A seemingly insignificant 1 degree rise in temperature is melting the world's glaciers, causing sea levels to rise rapidly and deadly heat waves and extreme rainfall events to become more frequent.
In the Himalayas of India, 200 people were killed in the glacial flood, and in the United States, unprecedented heavy snowfall temporarily corrupted civilization. Many parts of the world experienced the agony of torrential rain for over a month, flooding rivers and isolating villages. And heavy rains destroyed roads and flooded houses, leaving dozens of people dead or missing and leaving thousands of homeless. The reason the world's climate fluctuates is because of global warming. Greenhouse gases, which surround the Earth like a greenhouse, block the heat emitted from the ground into space. Carbon dioxide and methane are examples of greenhouse gases. Global warming is the warming of the Earth due to greenhouse gases. This diagram shows the changes in Earth's climate from the Holocene, when the Ice Age ended about 10,000 years ago and the Earth warmed up to the present. We see Earth currently settled in a moderately warm climate. Before the Industrial Revolution, the Earth was enjoying a slow life, with temperatures rising by 1 degree per millennium. Since the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, as soon as the advanced civilization of humans began, the average temperature of the Earth rose rapidly by 1 degree. It's happened in just the last 100 years. Humankind, which has made remarkable progress, has burned an enormous amount of fossil fuels such as oil, gas, and coal. And at the same time, greenhouse gases have rapidly increased, heating up the Earth. When seawater warms due to global warming, the water expands and increases in volume. The steady increase in the mass and volume of warm ocean water eventually raises the sea level to the point of the melting of the glaciers. Besides rising sea levels, there are some truly dire consequences of glaciers melting. In the glacier, all kinds of viruses that we have never met are dormant. A 15,000-year-old ancient virus has been discovered in the glaciers of the Tibetan Plateau. Viruses can hibernate in ice for up to 100,000 years. If the viruses that have been contained for tens of thousands of years flow out of the melting glacier, we can continue to be exposed to a more serious pandemic than coronavirus. There are also meteorological disasters caused by melting glaciers. As the sea surface warms, the water vapor from the sea creates typhoons. There are hurricanes in the Atlantic Ocean, typhoons in the South Pacific, and cyclones in the Indian Ocean. The temperature of the seawater will get higher and higher, which will create more water vapor, which will create more and more powerful typhoons. If this vicious cycle continues and the environment enters this state, the Earth's ecosystem will board the express train to the sixth mass extinction. Scientists say that soon the Earth, heated by the greenhouse effect, will pass a critical point and hit the oceans. When the critical point is crossed, humans can no longer change anything, and the hardest days since the last 1.2 million years will continue. The environment is rapidly becoming uninhabitable. The critical point at which the Earth becomes a hot greenhouse is 1.5 degrees, and now 0.5 degrees is left.
In 2015, 195 countries adopted the Paris Agreement, an international agreement within the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, with the goal of limiting global warming to well below 2, preferably to 1.5 degrees Celsius, compared to pre-industrial levels. Most countries around the world still emit greenhouse gases by burning huge amounts of fossil fuels, such as coal, oil, and gas. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, is the leading international body for the assessment of climate change. In its sixth assessment report, the IPCC concluded that we have only about 10 years left to reduce greenhouse gas emissions significantly in order to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So around 2050, the Earth will be changed to a completely different world from the present. While the world is already screaming with natural disasters, there is something scarier on the horizon. Organizational change is directly related to social and human rights issues. As environmental destruction accumulates and floods and wildfires become frequent, wild animals whose survival is threatened keep coming into the city center.
Humans have already begun to come into frequent contact with wild animals. We've all seen birds swarming over power lines in the city. Wild animals carry the risk of contagious diseases. Wild boar spreads African swine fever, destroying farmhouses, and migratory birds that visit our area every year spray avian influenza. This virus is likely to be applied to pigs through chickens and ducks, and eventually become a zoonosis like corona. Zoonotic plague, zoonosis, is a disease that is transmitted from animals to humans.
Now, humanity may have to fight a pandemic once every 4 to 5 years, on top of experiencing abnormal temperatures as if it were a daily routine. Also of concern to many scientists is the number of cities and countries that will disappear underwater. When glaciers melt and flow into the ocean, the mass of the seawater increases. As the ocean warms, the water expands and increases in volume. This expansion is because water molecules move faster as they become warmer, and this causes them to take up more space. The expansion of seawater is one of the main reasons why sea level is rising. Even if we stop emitting greenhouse gases tomorrow, those that have already been released will continue to warm the planet for many years to come.
This warming will cause the oceans to expand and glaciers and ice sheets to melt, which will lead to sea level rise. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change (IPCC) estimates that sea level could rise by 2.5 to 5 meters by the end of the 21st century, even if we stop emitting greenhouse gases tomorrow. If greenhouse gas emissions continue at the current rate, sea level could rise by as much as 24 to 30 meters by the end of the century. This is a very extreme estimate, but it is possible if we do not take action to reduce greenhouse gases emissions. There are far more cities around the world that will sink into the sea than we can imagine. The reality is that there are too many countries whose survival will be more seriously affected than we think. 40% of the world's population lives within 100 kilometers of the coast. In particular, island countries surrounded by the sea and at a low altitude will have most of their land sink under the sea. The Maldives is an island that will disappear without a trace if the sea level rises even by 1 meter. In Indonesia, which is made up of 17,000 islands, most of the coastal cities will be submerged by 2100. Already 40% of the coastal urban area is below sea level. Much of southern Vietnam, including Ho Chi Minh City, will also be submerged. The largest cities of Tokyo, London, and New York are also expected to suffer from flooding. In about 80 years, the average temperature in Northeast Asia is predicted to rise by about 4.7 degrees Celsius. The Korean Peninsula, the Japanese archipelago, and the vicinity of Shanghai and Beijing in China currently suffer from heat waves in July and August, but in the future they will suffer from heat waves from May to September, and the number of heat waves will increase to about 35 days each year. Heat waves that cause heat-related illness are silent killers. Every year in the scorching summer, people quietly die inside their homes. In the not-too-distant future, people will be hearing disappointing news more often amidst the combination of heavy rains, typhoons, and heat waves. If there is no dramatic change in the current situation, in about 50 to 60 years, even if the temperature rises By only 3 to 4 degrees Celsius, 1.8 billion people will suffer from water shortages, and more than 300 million people will have to migrate to avoid flooding due to sea level rise. Climate change is already dispatching millions of people around the world. Within several years, an estimated 21.5 million people were displaced by climate-related disasters. This number is expected to increase in the coming years as climate change intensifies. Scientists have been constantly throwing warning messages, but we are not feeling the threat of climate like we have never experienced before. Moreover, since global warming is related to all of humanity, it is difficult to think that any individual should be particularly interested in the issue. More and more people are aware of the growing problem, but it's hard to imagine what we are going to suffer from. Like the story of Daniel Kahneman, a psychologist and Nobel laureate, this is a phenomenon that often stems from cognitive bias, seeing only what you want to see. In short, humans perceive only the inconvenience of changing habits and not the benefits to be gained from it. That's why humans instinctively try to avoid discomfort. We immediately pay attention to and respond to threats, such as terrorists, that easily attract people's attention and unite them.
However, even though there is a clear enemy of the environment that is going to harm mankind, it is not easy to immediately have an emotional connection to it because it is thought to be in the distant future. But very significant changes regarding the climate have already begun. We must recognize the price we will pay 50 years from now.
Currently, the measures to respond to climate change proposed by governments are too weak. Governments must put in place strong measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible. Businesses should also actively expand projects for renewable energy and greenhouse gas emission reduction. The public should start with the easy task of properly separating and disposing of garbage in their daily lives.
The public should also refrain from wasting energy, purchase products from eco-friendly companies, and demand practical solutions from the government. Earth has been sending us messages of warning for a long time. We have seen more extreme weather events, such as heat waves, droughts, floods, and wildfires. We have also seen the melting of glaciers and ice sheets and the rising of sea levels. These are all signs of climate change, and they are a warning that we need to take action to protect our planet.
We need to take a more serious look at the situation and make changes to the way we live. We need to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and switch to renewable energy sources. We also need to improve energy efficiency in our homes and businesses. We need to reduce deforestation and protect our forests. And we need to invest in research and development of new technologies that can help us mitigate the effects of climate change. Thank you for watching the video, Humanity Must Face the Climate Change Threat, provided by History and Current Events. Gina, Bella, Cindy, Helena, and Tony have contributed so far as narrators. Thank you.